Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome back to my channel, My Liverlies. If you've never been here before, thank you so much for clicking on my video. I am so happy you found me. I do so hope that you will like and subscribe before you leave. Become part of the Mama family. Mama's got your back, at least where makeup's concerned, and definitely when that makeup is cheap. Today is True Love Tuesday, and we are going way, way back. I am talking 530 BC. We're going that far. Guys, we are talking about Eurydice.
I spend the entire video mispronouncing her name.
Tragic love
it's
story.
pronounced
It's
Eurydice.
And
I am
it's one
so
that I
sorry.
think we should all hear at least once. It is, I want to say it's the original tragic love story. Before we get started, a very special, very warm welcome to any of those that are new to my channel. I am so incredibly happy that you are here. If you enjoy the content, I do so hope that you will mash that thumbs up button. I hope that you will subscribe if you have not already. And I hope that you will ring my bell, turn on your notifications, so that way, next time I upload a video, you can come right back here and we can hang out together again. Also, my eye makeup is already done. I am just, it's happy and it's yellow and it's just straight up pretty. It also was ridiculously easy. Took me about 10 minutes to do. I did, of course, film a TikTok on today's eye look, just in case you're interested. I will have the tags for that, as well as all of my other socials, Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff listed in the description box below, along with a full list of everything that I'm going to be using in today's video. I don't usually talk too awful much about the products that I'm using, but of course, if you have any questions about what I used or how I used it, all you have to do is leave me a comment and I will get back to you. Also, if you see me looking over in this direction, it is because I am looking at my notes. Guys, I'm going to go ahead and say we're going to be here for about 30-45 minutes. So I hope that you will sit back, get comfy, get cozy, get you a big old glass of something to drink, and let's go ahead and dive right in. It has been a hot minute since I've done a Greek myth on my channel, so I am so excited about today's story. Again, we're talking about Orpheus and Eurydice, and it is such a tragic love story. It's the original tragic love story. So this story originates from around 530 BC, so very, very long time ago, and it is perhaps the original tragic love story. Many of the modern stories we have today originated from Greek and Roman myths. So they really were the original storytellers. And I think they're so fascinating. So it's always so fun to dive into the story. And also one of my favorite parts about it is there's always like a moral of the story, right? There's always a lesson to be learned at the end. So before I let you guys know what it is, let me know in the comments, what do you think the lesson of today's story is supposed to be? Orpheus was known as the most talented musician of ancient times. It's said that his father was Apollo. Apollo is the god of archery, dance, music, truth, and prophecy. And then his mother was the muse Calliope. Orpheus lived in Thrace, in the northeastern part of Greece, and he had a divinely gifted voice that could charm anyone and anything that heard it. When he was a young boy, he was gifted a lyre, and a lyre would become his very favorite musical instrument, though he was able to play many and mastered many. The lyre was his first, and it would go on to become his favorite. No god nor mortal could resist his music, and it's said that even the rocks and trees would pick themselves up and move closer to him when he played. But music was not Orpheus's only talent. He was definitely not just a one-trick pony. Orpheus is also credited with having taught mankind medicine, agriculture, reading and writing, poetry, things like that. He also was said to have been a mystic leader and was the inventor of many mystic rituals. So pretty much, not even a jack of all trades, a master of all trades. He pretty much could do just about everything. But most of all, it was the strange and hauntingly beautiful melodies that he played on his lyre that really drew him so much fame and so much attention. But there was just something about Orpheus's music that really made people see the beauty around them, a beauty that otherwise they might have overlooked or just ignored. So on top of being a musical genius, a philosopher, a seer, and a mystical rites leader, he was also an adventurer. Y'all, like I said, this man was a jack of all trades, a master of all trades, and he basically did just a little bit of everything. Now, it is said that Orpheus was also responsible for helping Jason and the Argonauts retrieve the Golden Fleece. Orpheus took part in the Argonautic expedition, which was the journey of Jason and the Argonauts to go to Colchis and steal the Golden Fleece. Now, they would not have been successful in this endeavor had it not been for Orpheus, because Orpheus was the one who played his music and lulled the sleepless dragon to sleep so that Jason and the Argonauts could slip past him and get to the Golden Fleece. Now, also, on the way back home, they had to sail past Siren Island, and we all know who the Sirens are, and they are very, very just, they're not a good thing for sailors, and of course had been the doom of many a ship. But because Orpheus was on board, he was able to play and sing louder than the sirens, drowned out their music, and Jason and the Argonauts were able to sail past Siren Island without, getting caught up in their song. All in all, Orpheus was a very well-accomplished man. He was kind and good and intelligent, but he was also brave and full of honor, right? Basically, the entire package. Orpheus spent most of his youth in the idyllic pursuit of the arts. So when he wasn't out adventuring with the Argonauts, he was sitting and writing music and poetry and basically fine-tuning his craft. He had mastered many, many instruments, and he got to a point where his talent far surpassed anyone else on earth. Eventually, he earned so much fame and respect for his music that humans and beasts alike would be enchanted by it, and often even the most inanimate of objects would long to have ears just so that they could hear his song. When he performed, audiences would gather from all over, far and wide, just to hear him sing just once. And it was at one such gathering, one such performance, that Orpheus's eyes fell upon the beautiful wood nymph,
Eurydice.
She was beautiful and shy, and throughout his entire performance, his eyes didn't leave her, not one single time. So, of course, as soon as his performance was over, he beelines straight to her. And the very minute that his song is over, she knows that she needs to have something more to do with this man. She had been drawn to Orpheus, enamored by his voice, and such was the spell, both in appearance and music, that neither one of them could look away from each other. Something inexplicable, a force neither one of them could touch, nor taste, nor see, but it was there, and it drew them together, and the pull was so strong that neither one of them even tried to fight it. It was as if the fates had brought them together, and who were they to argue with the fates? This force tugged at their hearts and tied them together. And before they knew just exactly what had happened, they fell truly, madly, deeply in love with each other. They became inseparable pretty much from the moment that they met, and felt like their hearts shattered anytime that they had to separate. After one such separation, they decided that they couldn't bear to go through that pain again, and so they, of course, decided to get married. Their wedding day dawned clear and beautiful and bright, and the perfect day for a wedding ceremony. So perfect, in fact, was their match that even the gods approved, and the god of marriage, Hymenaeus, was actually there, who is supposedly the brother to Orpheus, because it's said that his father is also Apollo and his mother is also the muse Calliope. He was there to bless their marriage. Now, what better sign is there than for the god of marriage to be at your actual wedding and give it his blessing? After the ceremony, Orpheus and his new bride and all of their guests, they feast and they make merry and they drink and they dance and they basically just have a really fantastic time. And they're having such a great time that they don't notice the passage of time. And before they know it, the sun has sank low in the sky, it's getting dark, and it's time to pick up and go home. After the last of the guests depart, Orpheus takes his new bride by the hand and they go home together as a married couple for the first time. For the entire duration of their wedding ceremony, Orpheus and his bride had sat there with nothing but just beaming grins on their face. They looked like they were in complete and total bliss. And they were a happier couple. All of the guests agreed that they had never seen before, and everyone had a really good feeling that their marriage was going to be one for the ages. Now, little did they know that their love would be stolen from them in just a matter of days. Sadly, their bliss would be stolen from them far too soon, and in its wake would be a grief that neither one of them would know how to process. Now, sadly, when it comes to mankind, for every man that finds true happiness and true bliss, there is another that absolutely hates him for it. For Orpheus, there was one man that coveted what he had to such a degree that he was willing to go to any length to destroy his happiness and take what Orpheus had for his own. Aristotle wholeheartedly despised Orpheus and desired his wife for his own, and decided that he was going to go to any length in order to make that happen. So he starts making a plan, and he doesn't even give the newly wedded couple a week. He doesn't even give them a month to enjoy being together until he decides to put this nefarious plan into action. Aristotle, who was a shepherd, had plotted and formed a plan to conquer the beautiful Nymph, and decided to put his plan into action just days after their wedding. Now, he waited in the bushes near a well-worn path, and a path that he knew Orpheus and his wife would take multiple times a day to get from their home to town and back. He waited and he watched, and before he knew it, the time had come. As soon as Orpheus and his wife walked past, Aristotle planned to jump out of the bushes and attack Orpheus. Now, while Aristotle had the advantage of surprise in his favor, he was fast, but Orpheus was faster. And somehow, some way he sensed, maybe it was divine intervention, but somehow he sensed that this attack was about to happen. Maybe a sound gave Aristotle away. But before Aristotle could do anything, Orpheus ended up grabbing his wife's hand, and they started booking it. They started running through the forest at full speed. The only thing Orpheus can think about is getting his wife to safety, right? He's not running away from the danger because he's scared for himself. He's scared because he can't fight and protect his wife at the same time. So his very first priority is getting his wife to safety, and then he'll double back and take care of the attacker, right? But Aristotle, he wasn't willing to give up, and he gave chase. He began running after the couple, and as fast as they went, Aristotle went even faster. Jealousy is both an incredibly toxic emotion, but also a great motivator, and Aristotle refused to give up until he had captured his prize. As they're running through the forest, Aristotle is right behind them, and Orpheus decides they need to pick up the pace. They need to go even faster. So he pushes his wife on, and all of a sudden, her hand is yanked from his grasp. Now, he's going so fast that he can't stop, just like on a dime. So he's going to take just a second to slow down. And by the time he turns around and comes back to his wife, the sight that greets him shatters his heart. Unable to really fully comprehend what is happening, like his brain is seeing it, but it's not putting two and two together. Orpheus looks around. He looks around for Aristotle because Aristotle was directly behind them, like he was hot on their tail. And then all of a sudden, this man has just disappeared, right? So he walks up to his wife, and she's laying on the ground. She's fallen and she hasn't gotten up. And where her features are usually, upturned and bright and full of that flush of youth and just and life, right? He comes up to her, and she's deathly pale, and the warmth in her skin is gone. And It takes him a minute to put two and two together, but he realizes that his wife has passed on. Aristaeus must have seen what had happened because he was behind them and just turned tail and ran back the other way and gave up on his plan. What had actually happened was she had stepped on a nest of snakes and she had been bitten by a deadly viper. And there was no cure, there was no way to save her. And as her breath became shallower and shallower, he sat there and he sobbed while she passed away in his arms. After the loss of his wife, Orpheus could not recover. He just wasn't the same person anymore. Where once he had lived with his head in the clouds and the world had been a beautiful place, now it was nothing but dark and dreary and gloomy, and his shoulders hung heavy with the weight of his despair. His shoulders hung heavy with the weight of grief, and it seemed as though the air had been forced from his lungs. His life without her just seemed endless. Every morning, just opening his eyes seemed like too much effort. He could do little more than grieve for her and basically wish his life away. Then, one day, something wonderful but crazy occurred to him. Now, what use is it to have a god for a father if you don't ask for favors from time to time? He asked if his father Apollo could put in a good word with his brother Hades, the king of the underworld, that maybe, just maybe, he might listen to Orpheus plead his case. Armed with his most impressive weapons, which would be his voice and his lyre, he embarks on this impressive journey to trek to the underworld, retrieve his wife's soul, and come back with her. So he sets out. He sets out and he makes the long and arduous trek to the gates of the underworld. And as he comes to the gates, he hopes and he prays and he demands entry. And to his eternal shock, they opened for him. Nobody challenged him, and he was able to walk right through. Apollo had done as he had been asked, and he had put in a good word to Hades and his wife Persephone. Orpheus stated why he was there. His voice, both sweet and pleasant to hear, but also full of such anxiety and pain. And after Orpheus pled his case, he offered the only tribute he had that really had any value. He sang. He then played the most beautifully devastating song for King Hades and Queen Persephone that either one of them had ever heard. As Orpheus sang to the king and queen of the underworld, he begged and he pleaded that they find mercy somewhere in themselves to reunite him with his beloved. So much hurt and sadness and pain and despair filled this man's voice that no being, be it man or God, could have ignored his plea. Hades openly wept while Persephone's heart melted. So effective was this song that even the gigantic three-headed hound that guarded the gates of the underworld, the dog Cerberus, covered his many ears with his paws and howled in pain. Orpheus's voice was in fact so moving and his plea so effective that right then and there, Hades promised to give him what he asked for. Now, Hades is known by all to not be a very forgiving god in the slightest. Usually he delights in other people's pain, but in this instance, he couldn't bear it, and he gave Orpheus exactly what he had asked for. Now, he said that Orpheus could leave the underworld with his wife that very day, but there was one caveat. Hades would allow Orpheus's wife to follow him out of the underworld, but during their journey back to the world of the living, at no point could Orpheus look back at his wife. Now, Orpheus was elated, rightfully so. He is ecstatic. He, a 1 in a million chance. He took a shot and he's accomplished his goal. After months and months of agony, of torture, he is going to be able to leave with his wife in tow. And he's sitting there thinking to himself, I've been all this time without her. I haven't seen her in so long. What is a few hours more? So he greedily accepts, and he begins his journey back toward the world of the living. And now Orpheus isn't allowed to look at his wife until they are both standing directly in the light of the land of the living. And the closer that Orpheus gets to the light, the faster his footsteps fall, the quicker he gets. He just wants to get there. He is so excited to finally be able to see his wife. He is so excited to finally be able to reunite with her. And this entire time, he is hearing her footsteps falling behind him. He knows that she's there, and he knows that they just have a little while longer. So his heart begins to beat faster, and his blood runs quicker through his veins. And you know, he almost looks back, but he's able to control himself. He's able to fight off the urge. And then before he knows it, he's stepped out of the gate, and he is standing in the light. The very minute that Orpheus steps out into the light, he immediately turns around to look at his wife, and his world ends once again. Orpheus hadn't taken into consideration that as he had gotten closer to the light, he had picked up his pace, and somehow, some way, she had fallen further behind him than he had anticipated. She's about to step out into the light, but she has not yet herself seen the sun in the land of the living. So exactly what Hades had warned would happen is what happens. Orpheus catches nothing but the slightest glimpse of his wife before she's yanked back into the darkness. The gates close, and he's barred access. Orpheus loses it, and of course, rightly so. He falls to his knees and he breaks down. If he thought his heart shattered the first time he lost her, this second time was even more unbearable. And it's all compounded by the fact that he knows he was this close. He was this close to having her back, and he made a mistake. He got too excited, and it didn't occur to him that she was further behind him than he had expected, right? So he breaks down. He loses it, and he's like, you know what? I did it once. I can do it again. And he marches back up to the gates, and instead of the gates opening to him like they had the first time, instead, Hermes, the messenger god, is standing at the gates. He's been sent by Zeus. And Hermes basically tells Orpheus that, listen, you had your chance, you kind of messed it up, and now you have to live with the consequences of your actions. Orpheus was well and truly shattered. If he had been broken the first time he lost his wife, this time was even that more devastating. The first time, it hadn't been his fault. He had been trying to do everything he could to protect and save her. But this time, it had been his fault. This time, he had been too eager. He hadn't been patient. And because of that, he had lost his wife forever. And he was done. He was broken. He lost the will to pretty much do anything. All hope of ever reuniting with his beloved wood nymph was now well and truly gone. There were no other options. There was no other saving grace. He now had to fully live with the fact that she was gone, and there was nothing that he could do about it. From then on, he lost all hope. He wandered heartbroken and pretty much disoriented. It was kind of like not only did his heart break, but his mind broke a little bit too. And he wandered pretty much aimlessly, day after day, night after night. And there was no solace. There was no comfort. There was no joy left in this man at all. Every spark of joy had extinguished the minute she was pulled back into the darkness. He found no joy in anything. There was no joy in his music, the thing that he had loved almost as much as he had loved his wife. There was no joy in his song or his music. He still played. He still played because what else was there for him to do? But whereas before his song had been beautiful and inspiring, it inspired curiosity, and it inspired things to seek beauty. Now his song inspired sorrow. These hauntingly beautiful melodies that just made you cry the minute that you heard them. And while still people clamored to hear his music, it was for a very, very different reason now. Orpheus's mistake tormented him, and he couldn't bring himself to move on. Now, he lived in a village, and the women of the village had expected him to grieve. They had expected him to mourn the loss of his wife, but then eventually they expected him to move on and pick a new wife, right? And not even just the women, but the men of the village as well. It's what was done. It was what was to be expected. And Orpheus just could not bring himself to even look at another woman, let alone to remarry. And over time, he found himself pulling further and further and further away from just people in general, but women in particular. And it got to a point where he would openly scorn them, openly had disdain for them, and didn't want anything to do with them. His only comfort, the only thing he found that brought him any kind of relief at all, was he would lay on this huge rock in this open field, and it was this really beautiful flat rock, and he would lay in the sun, and he would look up at the empty sky, and not even that it brought him peace, but it brought him emptiness. Something about staring up into the empty expanse of the sky kind of numbed him enough where he could just be. Now, like I said, the women of Orpheus's village had expected him to grieve his wife and then move on. They had expected that he would choose one of them to be his new wife. Now, they had each seen the way that Orpheus loved this wood nymph, right? They had seen how devoted and loving and giving and caring and kind he had been to her. And each one of the women of the village wanted that experience for themselves. And over time, as his disdain for them became more and more apparent, and their hopes got dashed one by one, their hope turned very much to hate. And they had quite a bit of a vendetta against him. And so one day, after yet another rejection, the women decided that they had had enough. And remember how I said he used to lay on his rock and stare up at the sky and pretty much just go blank? Well, one afternoon, the women, after looking for him, finally found him at his special rock. And when they came upon him, they confronted him, and they asked him basically, why do you hate us so? Why do you treat us that way? Right? You never were like that before. All we want to do is love you. And he basically would just ignore them. He had nothing to say to them. He didn't want anything to do with them. And they became so enraged that they began to berate and to beat him. They kicked him and they threw stones, and they basically gave it to him, and he did not survive. The women put an end to his life because he had rejected them. After they ended him, they cut him into pieces, and they threw his parts along with his beloved lyre into the river. Eventually, both his head and his lyre floated downriver to the island of Lesbos, where the muses, remember his mother, the muse Calliope, the muses found him and his lyre, and they were the ones who ended up giving him a proper burial. And it's said that even to this day, when you come across his place of rest, you can still hear his hauntingly beautiful and plaintive music being played. After Orpheus passed, his soul descended down into Hades, and after what seemed like an eternity, he was eventually reunited with his beloved wood nymph, and they spent the rest of eternity about as happy can be. Guys, the moral of today's story is basically don't live in the past. Nothing good can come from staring over your shoulder all the time, and also patience is key. Think before you act. Guys, I love you so very much. I really do hope you enjoyed today's video as much as I did. I always really love these old stories. I think they're so much fun. If you did enjoy today's video, don't forget to give it a big old thumbs up before you leave. This is today's finished look. What do we think? Do we like it? Do we love it? Let me know in the comments below. Guys, as always, no filters, no fancy lighting. It is just me sitting in front of my camera telling you guys an epic love story. Hoping you guys are enjoying what I'm doing. And until next time, stay safe. Take care of yourselves, and remember, you're important. Bye.